were to describe the overpopulation rabbit problem, describe how it is and what you're doing to combat it.
We're at the San Diego House Rabbit Society, created here in San Diego to be that soft landing space for the 11th hour rabbit. In 1983, we are the only rabbit shelter here in San Diego. We're one of the larger facilities. With the overpopulation problem in California, for us since 2022, we have rescued and cared for over 400 rabbits. We found homes for 280 of them. We found homes for them so far. We get about 3 to 5 relinquishment requests a day. It's gotten worse since COVID. Just yesterday we had rabbits being dumped at our door. We had 10 dumped at our door. We had people knocking on our door in terms of finding loose rabbits. We also have maybe once a day or more people going onto our social media pages and saying they found dumped rabbits in the parks or in their yards, and if we can go and catch them and bring them in. We also are combating with, like we talked about earlier, the breeders and the cafes that are breeding rabbits. And then when families aren't educated well, in which what we do is education, they tend to relinquish them and call us to take in rehome the rabbits. So what we do here is we do a lot of education work. We have a lot of materials that we've created online, videos from our vet partners on how to care for rabbits, as well as handbooks to give out on how to safely have a rabbit in the home and live with the rabbit happily in the home, as well as what rabbits need, like exotic vet care, just a special diet and a special needs in terms of how they're supposed to be housed in the home. So all of our services that we provide is centralized around how to keep that rabbit in a healthy home.
With your experience seeing the public deal with rabbits, describe the difference between how the public views dogs and cats versus how they view rabbits as pets.
For the most part, people view rabbits as a starter animal as opposed to dogs and cats. People see them as cuddly. People want a cuddly animal in their home, and they want the rabbit to teach their children as a jumping off point to get a dog and a cat. So it's pretty devastating to us because it's a lot of impulse shopping because of that reason. Or they get the rabbits for their young children, and they say that this is to teach them responsibility. Well, what happens is then maybe come about 9, 10 years old, they lose interest, and the parents do not want to clean up a litter box after a rabbit, clean the pen. It's too noisy in their bedroom and so forth. They have not treated that animal like the rabbit, like a family member, like they would maybe a dog or cat, because of how their personalities. That's where how people think of rabbits, and that's kind of what we're trying to dispel in our adoption process and our adoption pieces, as well as our education pieces, that they're terrible first time pets, they're terrible starter pets, they're terrible pets for children too, because not only are they terrible because they require that much more work than a dog and cat, I think, it's just they're silent creatures. So we tell people, as a prey animal, that animal will start exhibiting that they don't feel well probably a week, 3, 4 days after they started not feeling well, just because they're not showing you the symptoms. They're not whining, begging, barking, or anything like that, right? Rabbits don't do that. So by the time they're not eating, they probably have not felt well for about 2, 3 days. And then now you're in an emergency setting. And the problem with a lot of communities, there's not a lot of emergency veterinarians that will see rabbits. So now we're fighting against the clock to see. And what people will call me in the middle of the night or email, and I'm calling veterinarians and vet emergency clinics to see if we can get them into those emergency vets to at least triage before we can get a rabbit to go see their normal or a rabbit savvy vet during the day.
And I would imagine how people also may not be willing to put the same resources into rabbits as dogs and cats. So, like, if they are sick or injured, then the animal just ends up suffering because
Yeah.
people don't want to put those kind of resources into that animal.
Yeah, one of the biggest pain points for us is spay and neutering. Rabbits are prolific. It's all true about what rabbits do. They breed like bunnies. They don't have a heat season. So every 28 days, they're going to have babies. We've had it where shelters have asked us to take young mothers with litters. And then 28 days later, another oopsie litter came out, because that's how their bodies are created, is to carry it on both sides and then fertilize and a goat, right? So we didn't even have a male next to the woman and the female, and they had 9 more babies come out. So that's how hoarding cases happen because they cannot afford spay and neuters, and then they keep having babies, and so it costs a lot. It costs a lot to just spay neuter a rabbit. It costs $400, $500 for a neuter, $700 to $800 for a spay. So I understand that it is very expensive, but people don't really get it. So we get phone calls, "Can you find me a cheap vet?" And I'm like, I don't even know that exists. And so people just don't realize that there is an investment in these to be had for these rabbits. An exotic vet is very hard to find. Someone that wants to specialize in exotic animals like rabbits. So they are going to be a little bit more expensive because they've now had to relocate and put themselves in a clinic that will invest in being able to see the rabbit in their clinics.
If genetically modified animals come to market, specifically rabbits, could you tell us what you would anticipate seeing if that were to come true?
So I can tell you right now, just like dogs and cats, everyone has a favorite, right? So right now, everyone wants a long, everyone wants a dwarf, everyone wants a specific breed. So I can only imagine something like this comes out, and now we have another fad, right? So then, and we don't even know how to take care of this genetically modified animal either, right? So, we each have our own specialties. We are domestic rabbits. Project Wildlife does wild rabbits. Now, who's gonna? I've talked to some of my vet partners here, and they're like, we wouldn't even know how to begin vet care for that animal if that rabbit gets sick, right? We wouldn't even know how to care for rabbit. We're still all learning how to just care for baby bunnies when they lose their mothers, and we have one that came in who was 1 day old and had no mother. We don't know how that happened. And we lost the rabbit because we were just trying to figure out the formula and how that infant's going to eat and feed and stuff like that too. And then he had an upper respiratory issue. So coming with genetically modified animals, you don't even know what kind of issues are going to come up with as this, because if they're going to be an unknown. So I just know that we're going to have the same problems that we have right now when we have these spur of the moment purchases, right? Or adoptions for rabbits because they're neat, they look cute, and they're different. And then they're going to go back to the shelter when they lose interest. And now we got to figure out how to pay for it and care for these animals. We know nothing about them.
I'm assuming that the euthanasia rates would unfortunately increase as well because you have more and more rabbits coming into this. There's already healthy and adoptable animals who are awaiting foster and adopt or adoption. So I'm just curious if that's something that you experience and you've unfortunately come across.
In San Diego, we're pretty lucky to have a no-kill mentality here in most of our shelters. But I do know that coming out of like Riverside, there's other counties too that have a harder time with space and stuff. So we constantly hear those cases that they have to euthanize for space and harder to place animal rabbits too. So I expect those are going to go up. Those numbers are going to go up, and it's going to put a burden on both shelter and rescues to take in those animals. And then we can't help the animals that are really, really, really in that need the help too. So that's the other thing is we have a lot of shelters that will refuse to take rabbits because it's not part of their budget. It's not something that they know. They don't have vet care that will handle rabbits either. So they lean on the rescues to really pull those rabbits to take care of them, or they house them outdoors, which in high heat is really, really deadly for any animal too. Like I said, in San Diego, we're very fortunate to have shelters that will accept rabbits into their shelter. I know a lot of other counties refuse to take rabbits. So the burden's gonna be on the rescues too. Rescues do not get monetarily support from any parent organization or any government funding. So we may have the name of House Rabbit Society, but we've never gotten funding for any of the larger organization of House Rabbit Society. We are funding ourselves. Other large shelters who ask us to rescue and help with medical care, they do not support funding. They do not fund us either. So we are doing this all because of generous donations in our services. So if it's $407 spay neuter, then we got a $1,200 bill that we have to do a CT. It's all relies on our rescues and individual funding.
It's truly a labor of love. And if you had the microphone and you could say one thing to the entire world in regards to rabbits, what do you wish that people knew?
Just learn about them, educate yourself before getting a rabbit. And then if you do get a rabbit, make sure you get the medical care that they need. Like save money to get the medical care that they need for themselves.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate it so much. This is great.